welcome to Missed Checkpoints, the video game book club podcast. Today, we're starting a discussion on Enslaved, Odyssey to the West. I'm your host, Marqus, and joining me today, as always, are the homies. First off, we have Greg.
What's up?
Next, we have Dante.
What's good, Internet?
And last but not least, we have the homie Trevor.
What's going on?
All right, so as I said before, we're talking about Enslaved, Odyssey to the West. This is the first selection of Greg, or I guess of our selections. This is Greg's choice. So I'm going to kick it to Greg so he can introduce the game.
Okay. So I guess I'll start with why I chose this game. So I played it a little bit after it was released, maybe a few months after it. And kind of as usual, just kind of bounced off it. I don't really remember what I was playing at the time, but it's always been something that I've wanted to go back to. So I figured this would be a good chance to do it. Also, if I remember right, this game's come up the last two times in our voting.
This is like...
Yeah, it has. Yeah, it has.
Yes.
So
Can you just say that the real reason was peer pressure? Can we just get that out of the way?
I mean, that could be a little bit of it, but also I did have some interest in going back to this at some point. So figured now that would be the best time probably. So so a little bit of background on the studio that created this. Ninja Theory was originally formed in March 2000 in Cambridge, UK, and at that time they were known as Just Add Monsters. Under this name, they created one title, which was Kung Fu Chaos, which was a hack and slash multiplayer game. The studio was eventually picked up by a publisher known as Argonaut Games, and that was back in September of 2000. They started working on a demo to kind of shop around, and this is how they eventually got in contact with Microsoft, who was looking for games for their unannounced console at the time, which was the original Xbox. Fast forward several years, this game eventually came out in 2003, and to a little bit, I mean, I don't remember how the reception was, but I remember it was just kind of a run-of-the-mill game. So eventually, fast forward a few more years, they start working on a sequel to this, and eventually the publisher that they had, Argonaut Games, ended up running into a little bit of trouble, so they ended up purchasing the share that they had from them and rebranded the studio to what is known now as Ninja Theory. And they took the work that they were doing for the sequel for Kung Fu Chaos and turned it into what would be known later as Heavenly Sword. So Ninja Theory also went on to do a few other games, which Enslaved was one of them. And also they took on the reboot for the franchise Devil May Cry, known as DMC. Studio's been known for their stellar motion capture detail, fluid combat and controls, and their strong attention to detail. So they began work on Enslaved. I guess it was announced September 2009. It was coming up for 360 and PS3, and it was just announced with some screenshots of the two lead characters. Andy Serkis who was one of the lead characters in this game, was working with Ninja Theory on the previous title that they had, Heavenly Sword. So he was a little bit more involved with the motion capture side, performance capture side of this game. The gameplay was developed to include more variety than their last project, which was Heavenly Sword, opting to give players more ways to deal with scenarios such as using stealth to avoid combat or Trip's abilities to aid in distractions. As far as combat, Ninja Theory chose a more streamlined approach than other action games to make it more accessible. They also tried to design the two main characters to have somewhat of a codependent relationship and to not make Trip feel like dead weight. The method of motion capture that they used was the same method for Heavenly Sword, which was advanced for the time, and was highlighted for its ability to capture small details in characters' expressions. This game is a action-adventure platformer. It was released October 5th, 2010, and a complete version of the game was also released with all the DLC, and that was in October 25th of 2013. The story is a reimagining of the novel Journey to the West by, I'm going to probably butcher this name, Wu Chang-in. The original story took place in a fantastical version of ancient China, But this game is set 150 years in a future post-apocalyptic world following a global war. Humanity is almost all wiped out, along with still active war machines left from the conflict. The plot revolves around someone who forces the help and protection of a warrior. The game's story was written by Alex Garland, who was the writer for 28 Days Later, and later on went to direct Ex Machina. The reception to this game, Enslaved, was positively reviewed. I think it had around 83% on Metacritic. Much of the praise was directed at the art style. If you look at a lot of the post-apocalyptic games at the time, like Gears of War or Fallout, they're very dark, drab games with kind of muted color palette, while Enslaved is a very vivid game. And you can also kind of see this in Devil May Cry, I guess the DMC remake that they had. The game received 6 nominations from the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. I guess it's DICE, but no, didn't win any awards. Namco Bandai had projected sales of about 1 million, but it didn't hit the mark, reaching about 460,000 by November 2010, and almost a year later, it had only totaled about 730,000, which wasn't substantial enough to warrant a continuation of the franchise. So the sequel that was planned at the time was ultimately canceled. So that's about all I've got for it. So,
can I just say that you do the most thorough intros, and I super appreciate it for this game.
Appreciate it.
All right. So, what? I'm gonna just go around table. What version or what version did you guys play? So I played on 360.
I ended up playing on Steam. I have the 360 version, but again, it was kind of like the thing of just being lazy, so I just went ahead and bought it on Steam.
Gotcha. And what about you, Trevor and Dante?
I played on 360.
Steam.
Okay. And then, if I'm not mistaken, Dante and I are the only two that have played this game to completion.
Yeah, I think so.
So, do you know how far you got when you played? Or did you get very far?
I think I got to about chapter 5.
Chapter 5. And then, Trevor, this is completely foreign to you, right?
Yeah.
Well, not the story, but the game.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
And Trevor, you've read Odyssey to the West before?
Yeah, Journey to the West. I had to read it for a class, but that class ended up being one of like my favorite literature classes because we read a bunch of like epic tales, and of course we read Journey to the West, and it was like a really interesting story. And there's a lot of adaptations of Monkey or Journey to the West, like in movies and video games, like Dragon Ball Z. Goku is based on Sun Wukong.
I see. Okay. Well, I guess you guys want to just go into the gameplay of this game first, or should we cover it? You think we should cover it that way?
Yeah, might as well.
I think we should at least like set up some of like the setting and like.
Oh yeah.
Greg's thing was really good, but also like just so they know like what we're fighting in.
Okay.
How
so,
the game, yeah.
As Greg said, this is a story that's set hundreds of years in the future, where there was a global war that has decimated Earth. So in this future, the entire human race has nearly been eradicated, and there are robots basically plaguing the land. Although they are like from a bygone era, they are still following orders to eradicate the remaining humans. And the cool thing, or the thing I appreciate about this, is it takes place in the modern, or like the current, like it's not a fictional world. It's like Earth. So like there are monuments. There's like I believe it's the Statue of Liberty. You see that in this game. They make one of the story beats. There's a play that's being held, or holograms are acting a play, a Shakespeare play. So like it's like our time, and kind of like what Greg said. And this is the thing that one of the things I like the most about this game, because I freaking love this game, is that it is such a bright and colorful game. The environment is just overrun with greenery and just like shrubs and just all types of foliage. So all types of trees and like even though you're in an urban environment like a city, there's vines and grass and all these things all over the place. And a lot of times when you see like post-apocalyptic versions of cities, it's super dark and dusty, or I'm trying to think like Mad Max style, or even like what's another, like even when we played
Fallout.
Yeah, Fallout, where it's just super gray and drab, where this is the exact opposite, and it's just like, oh, without all these humans here, it's just Mother Nature has the ability to like spread, and just be everywhere. And then the most interesting thing, or the cool juxtaposition, is that there's all these machine like mechs and everything in this environment, and they're super dark, gray, and drab, but then they're in this lush and like colorful environment. And I guess that's like their iteration, right? Because the Journey to the West is not necessarily set in the future, right, Trevor?
No, not at all.
Is
It's
it just mostly the story of the characters?
Like, if we want to get into it now, the game doesn't exactly follow the story of the book. Like, the only similarities are the characters.
So it's like loosely based off of?
Yeah, almost like a futuristic version of it.
Gotcha. And how do you think, I guess, do you like the setting for the game and just how it looks and how vibrant it looks?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because one of the things is, even though it is like supposed to be based in like New York or on Earth, it seems like it's completely fantasy, like it's completely made up.
And yeah, and isn't that like kind of interesting? Because like normally you see New York and it's just like a city, just a nondescript city. And then the other cool thing I like about this, and I think that we'll probably maybe touch on it again later, is Ninja Theory does, in my opinion, they do a fantastic job with the way they do the facial animations in this game. So there's a select amount of characters that you run into in this game, and I feel like the facial animations just do a fantastic job of bringing life to these characters and like some type of drama and like urgency and like when they're interacting with each other, and it makes it very like engrossing.
I didn't even think about it now that you said that, but like I guess given the fact that there's only like 2 characters,
dude,
they can kind of like go all out as far as that stuff, right?
Yes, and like I kind of wanted to like, that's like my trump card, like my trap card that I wanted to play in episode 2 of this, where it's like, just this story only has 3 characters in it, like for real, like only really has 3 characters, and it's so engrossing, and like I'm here for it, and I just really, really, really like how they do the facial animations for these characters. And I'm not saying it's like, it's very realistic, and not necessarily as realistic as something like LA Noire, how that they went all out, but this is like, basic to me, it's like the next best thing, honestly.
Well, I guess if you look at it like that, right? LA Noire came out like 3 years after this or something like that, or maybe it was a couple years, but for the time,
I think it was a year later.
Yeah. So for the time, I felt like it was really like good motion capture.
Yeah, I cannot say enough about that.
I know Andy Serkis did the voice for Monkey, but did he also do motion cap?
Yes,
yeah, he did.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the things he's known for.
I will say that this is probably the first game where I actually like actively went to IMDb, and in my mind, I knew that dude was famous. I was like, whoever does the voice of Monkey is not just a video game actor. He must do more.
Like, straight up, I mean, this is stupid, but like, just how gruff and gravelly his voice was. When I first played it, I thought it was Vin Diesel. But like, it was Andy Serkis, so like, even cooler, and that dude is awesome. So, I really, 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 really like this game. They kind of alluded to the fact that this game kept being brought up and there was peer pressure. I think every single inner vote that we had amongst ourselves to kind of determine what game we were going to pick, I always had this on my list. This is probably how Dante feels about Metal Gear Solid Revengeance is how I feel about this game. It's probably like the best way I can say it.
Whoa. Like, Metal Gear Solid Revengeance isn't like a top 20 game for me.
Oh.
I just think it's really good.
Okay, well, you were saying, I remember you said it was like one of your favorite third-person action adventure games ever.
It's very good. It's very good.
Okay, well, this is like definitely top 5, one of my favorite 360 games, or like that past generation. So this would definitely be in my like top 20 in my life, probably top 15.
The real question is it better than Bionic Commando?
Hands down.
There we go. The definitive answer.
That's the first sensible thing he said on this podcast.
There's no words for how excited I was to play this game, you guys. Let's get into the gameplay because I can gush and I got a lot. Like I literally on my notes I have a list things I F with about this game, and then it's like a list of like 10 things. So. So yeah,
I feel like this is going to be the anti-revengeance.
That's why I needed you here, man. Because I needed to hear like you need to bring me back to reality, like because I can gush and gush, but I need you to bring me down and like, yeah, you're right, Marqus. But what about this other thing that you're overlooking? So like you're the yin to my yang.
Peanut butter to the jelly.
Basically. So the player takes the role of Monkey, which is the Andy Serkis voice character, in a third-person perspective using a variety of combat moves and platforming skills to overcome obstacles. In combat, Monkey utilizes a staff that doubles as both a close combat and long-range projectile weapon that can stun or damage foes. And then, as we said before, enemies are like, they come in the shape, like, all the enemies you fight are mechs. So they have different forms. So they have shields. They can block your attacks. They have turrets. Sometimes they have like some type of status effect over their head. So like you can do a finisher and then they explode right afterwards, or they can call more enemies to battle. So there's a little bit of I guess the best way I can describe it is it's kind of like a pseudo Batman combat. Not in the sense that you go from fighting one thing to another like seamlessly and there's like a score that's being tallied up or like a combo that's being tallied up, but in the sense that like you're going to fight like 3 or 4 different enemy types at the same time, and so there's like specific ways that you take them down. There's a heavy emphasis on platforming, with monkeys scaling and leaping across the varied ruins throughout the game. Some areas and platforms even collapse, so they require faster timing in order to avoid falling to your death. And then Monkey is accompanied by Tripitaka, I think is how her name is, but they just call her Trip in the game. And basically he must escort and protect her as they travel. And I know what a lot of people think when they hear escort is that, like head, eye roll, like I don't want to bring some dead weight with me. And I think one of the things that I do like about this, kind of almost like when we talked about BioShock Infinite with Elizabeth, where they are such valuable assets to you while you're playing through the game. So she has abilities like she can create a hologram decoy. She's very tech savvy, so she can create like this hologram decoy to attract the enemy attention. She can heal you. She can even hack into... I should say this too. The reason why you have to escort her is because she attached a headband to you, a slave headband, that basically has a kill switch on it. So if she dies, you die. So you have to do everything in your power to protect her, and basically you have to escort her to her village, which is however like hundreds of miles west of New York. So she's kind of like enslaving you, a little bit, but she does prove to be useful, her tech skills. So as I was saying, she hacks into your headband to basically reveal enemy locations and mine locations, so it makes it easier for you to get around. What's up, Dante?
You said that with not that much conviction, and you do realize that the game's
is
Enslaved.
But I think it's like a multi there's multiple.
It works on multiple levels.
Yeah.
I get you.
So I think I get it, but I don't think when I think of enslaved, I think of what the slavers are doing, and not that's like the prominent like enslaved. Like I don't know how to describe it. Do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. There's multiple enslavements happening. I don't even know if enslavement is a word, but I'm going to use it.
I thought you were making a pun too, but
Oh no! Like I mean I recognize that she is basically forcing you initially against your will to help her, and because of this headband, you are basically beholden to her. But I don't think this is the only instance, and because of the way their relationship develops, which initially it's not it's non-consensual, but after a while,
well, you made it sound like they did it.
No. Well, I'm just saying, like, she's holding you against your will initially, but I think after a while, like, even if you didn't have the headband, Monkey would help her out on his own volition, right?
Yeah, he starts to see both sides, and he's cool with it.
Okay, man. Yeah. So even though she lacks the athletic ability to like get around in the world as quickly as you do as Monkey, her small size does help out in certain world puzzles. So she can fit into smaller spaces, or she can be thrown up to platforms to reach places that Monkey would not be able to reach. And then
I really like that they added that too, because it seems like some games when you have a companion, it's like they magically follow behind you closely, even like when you scale tall buildings. Like you may not see them scale the building behind you, but all of a sudden they just pop up and they're at the top there with you. But they like showed her inability to scale stuff, and that like she needs help being lifted up on the platforms.
Yeah, there's even instances too where like there's one instance where she's just very scared, so you literally just give her a piggyback ride and basically just you traverse the environment with her on your back. And you can do that a large portion of this game too. You can just put her on your back as well. You can't fight in that instance, but you can like do the platforming. And obviously, as a nod to like platforms of the past, there are things you can collect. So there are orbs that are littered across the environment, and they drop after each battle, which you use to upgrade your combat abilities, your devices abilities, as well as like your shields and your overall health. And then there are like 20-something masks hidden in the environment around the game that they kind of like. They provide these weird fourth wall breaking cutscenes, and I think what I read was something like they are like.
They're the developers, aren't they?
Well, some of them are pictures of Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
So they are like, it's like a fourth wall breaking way of showcasing it's supposed to showcase a glitch in Monkey's headband that shows him visions of what appeared to be life before the war. So like, it's a cool little weird almost. It makes me. I don't remember the story, but it made me think of like Assassin's Creed 2 when you do all that. Is it the feathers?
Are you talking about like the apples of Eden?
Yeah, and it just shows like some weird like real life stuff going on. And like this is like the same thing where it's showing weird. It's just showing shortcuts to different photographs with this weird visual filter put over the top of it, and like it's super quick, jarring, and then it just cuts back to the actual game. And I actually don't even think there is any type of payoff to getting all the masks. Like
that's what I was about to ask.
I think you just get an achievement. I don't think there's any explanation for why it does that. So it's not something that is necessary, but it's like a cool nod to like the platforming roots where it's like, hey, like people when they play platforming games, they collect things. So what if we put these little headbands in here or these masks in here and people can collect these? That's kind of how I see it as, and not necessarily like a necessity. Yeah. So, the one of the things since I've beaten this game, and I think Dante's beaten this game. One of the things that we ran into is, unfortunately, unless we delete our data, everything carries over. So I know I've beaten this game twice, I think. So I have upgraded my character fully. I have found all the masks, and I have most of the orbs. So I'm not running into some of the same stuff that you guys are probably running into. And were you having some of the same issues, Dante? Where you felt like you were overpowered in combat?
Like, you just don't have any type of challenge, at least for where we're at right now. It's once you upgrade the shield, it trivializes a lot of. Well, I don't want to say it was hard in the first place. I don't honestly remember enough about my first playthrough. I don't remember having a hard time, but with all of the upgrades they give you, you really don't have to worry about much.
Yeah.
Coming into it at, like, on a brand new like playthrough for me, like it's fairly easy. Like, I don't think I've died but maybe once the entire time, and it was during all the combat that you had in Chapter 7. I think it was just because I was getting hit by turrets while I'm trying to do some of the combat. But other than that, I mean, it's been pretty easy.
What about you, Trevor? Have you run into any issues with?
No issues at all. One of the first things I bought, the first upgrades, was regeneration. Like, it regenerates health over time, and that almost makes those the health packs like useless. Like, I don't think I even pick them up now.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's like, for me, it's like, because I have everything maxed out, like, I don't remember what combat was like that early, so it's, like Dante said, it's been trivialized, so that is one of my complaints of this game, is that it is not that difficult. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, there's not really a challenge.
Well, I remember, like, some of the, like you said, the game's not difficult, but, like, some of the difficult fights where, like, you might get overwhelmed by a bunch of enemies, or even, like, the first boss encounter, like, when you get hit, it's almost disorienting, like, for your character. Like, you have to, like, kind of regroup, and you can't, as far as I know, there's no way to lock on to the enemies, right?
No.
Yep.
So, like, when you get hit, like, the camera kind of moves around a little bit, and so you have to reorient yourself to, to get back on track to, after losing your composure, I guess. Like, the game does a really good job of displaying that.
It also doesn't help that, at least for me, I feel like in some of the scenarios, like, the camera's just way too close. So it's like you're trying to, so you get hit, and then on top of that, your screen is like completely red, so that doesn't help either. And then you have to deal with the camera sometimes because it's just like super close. But yeah, I mean, that's probably like one of the issues I had during combat.
So one of the things I will say, like, one of the biggest positives I had about this game overall was some of the camera work they did. I do agree, like, the camera is in way too close for an action game, but since this game is kind of, I don't want to say trivial, but it's like, it's not like super hard, and you're not like trying to parry stuff like 1-to-1 and stuff like that. So I really enjoy, as you hit the enemy, the camera swings along with Monkey's pole, and it makes this very cinematic feel for the combat that you're in.
Tell him. Or what about when you get that last hit on somebody, and it zooms into his face, and it's in slow motion as he's like basically destroying the mech? That is like, and like, it's so sick too, because it's like the mech is exploding, and it like zooms in on his face, and it's like lighting up, and like just the way they do the lighting in it, and it's actually a little like over the top, like maybe too much lighting, but it's so satisfying every time it happens. And it's like, go ahead.
Oh no, I was I was just gonna say I realized I do the exact same thing in DMC where like when you kill the last enemy, it's like it zooms in like that, does like kind of the exact same thing. I didn't really think about that till now.
And then one of the things too, just speaking on the camera angles, I agree with you guys it being a little too close, and that's not something that I ever like. It never bothered me, but I do agree that that does seem off when you compare it to other games of this like style. But one of the things I do like about the camera is when you're actually playing in the game. Like I like when you're going through the environment and the camera angle is changing, and I feel like it does a good job of like changing the camera perspective to like showcase the environment and just like the world you're in. So like you sometimes you get like a really cool back shot of like the background as you're jumping over something, or the camera angle is changing as like if you're on like a bridge or like climbing up something. I think a lot of the camera angles they use do a good job of showing like this epic environment, you know, that he's in.
I got a real like Uncharted-ish vibe from a lot of the platforming in this game. I don't know if it was just me.
Well, it's Uncharted Light.
Yeah.
Which do we want to go into that, or do you want to finish up the combat stuff first before we go into the platforming stuff?
We can do the combat stuff, or actually, I mean,
because I kind of like I don't have too much to say about the platforming, and I have probably more to say about the combat. So. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the platforming a little bit.
Yeah.
So the platforming is fine. It's very typical third-person adventure style platforming. But it also has some issues, in my opinion. It kind of has that PS2 era, like, instead of let me, like, instruct the player through the environment, it's more... hey, let me make all of these things glowy, and you just got to jump to the glowy bits. And back then, it was a little bit more prevalent, but playing it now, it's kind of fallen out of vogue to do that. So I have a hard time kind of forgiving it on that aspect.
I want to hear Trevor's opinion on that first before I...
So this game came out in 2010, right?
Yeah.
So we had the first Assassin's Creed at that point. So if I were to...
Another game Marqus likes.
I do like the first Assassin's
Oh, the first
Creed.
one? You like that one?
I like the first and the second one.
He's like, really?
I only played the first two, and I like both of them. The first one is very monotonous.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it.
And in the climbing aspect, the traversal is one of my favorite parts of this game, honestly. And that's the reason why I love it. And it's mostly because of the animation. Like, I don't think they put so much work into trying to let you grab onto, like, any type of ledge or anything. But they put more work into the animation. Because you're basically paying attention to your character moving while they traverse the area, rather than trying to worry about missing a handhold or, you know, not jumping far enough to reach a ledge.
On top of that, did I cut you off, Trevor? I don't know.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. On top of that, I just think because of how bright and like vibrant this world is, they had to do something to pull your attention to what you needed to do. And I'm not to say like, oh, you would get lost in the like, you would.
But you just use that example, but consider like Mirror's Edge, the original.
Okay,
that
so
was
like
a super bright and vibrant game.
Mirror's Edge was not bright and vibrant in the same way. Mirror's Edge was like the environment was white, gray, and red, and like that's a good example because I was going to bring up Mirror's Edge too because like the only thing I can think of in Mirror's Edge is like you knew where you had to go because it was red, and like if you were to play Mirror's Edge on the hardest difficulty, I don't think it did this, but for example, if it just turned off the redness, so you just had to know the route. That's the only other like alternative I feel like for this game. So like if we play this game on the hardest difficulty, just turn off the shiny aspect of it, and it's just like okay, you just need to have played this game a couple times to know what you need to go. But I do think Mirror's Edge got away with it because there wasn't that much color in that game compared to this game, and I feel like this game, it would be too easy to like get lost in the world, if that makes any sense.
My favorite game of 2017 actually did the same thing. Horizon Zero Dawn.
It had glowy stuff.
Yeah, like the parts where you can grab onto were yellow.
Like I get what you're saying, Dante, and I do wish that if I play this on the harder difficulty, like they didn't have the glowy stuff. But I understand the design decision on why they included it, and I'm okay with it being included. Like, and I never thought about Trevor's explanation of like the climbing animations in this game are amazing. Like they're awesome to me. They're like super like
It's very fast and fluid.
but it feels weighty, like the way the character is moving, like when things are collapsing, and like it seems like there's a threat and like a danger. And I think that the animations do a good job of showcasing that. Now, on the flip side, I feel like if this game, like I don't feel like the climbing is that difficult, and I know that's probably a complaint that you have, and like that's maybe another knock I have. One of the few knocks I have on this game is that there's not really much to the platforming. It's just kind of like just tap A, tap A, tap A, tap A. Okay, cool. You've performed the platforming, and I don't necessarily like that. But I think they do so much other things right in the aspect that I'm willing to overlook that.
However, I guess if you're speed running, like, have you noticed that if you time your jumps just right and hit A, like right as you grab something, you'll automatically fling yourself to the next handhold?
Yeah. You don't have to watch the entire animation of certain animations, so you can quickly traverse it. And I just kind of like, I mean, like, we're button mashers, right? Like, you guys mash through the Advance Wars story.
I imagine if you're
Oh yeah.
if you're trying to challenge yourself, you would try to make it so that you're traversing, like in that one level with the tower, like you're basically climbing the tower in one fluid motion rather than jumping and stopping at each ledge.
Yeah, definitely. And don't get me wrong, like, it looks cool and I like the platforming, but I don't think it's that difficult. And if I'm going for that personal challenge of like, I'm speedrunning and I'm trying to make this look as fluid and like effortless as possible, that's one thing. But like, if I'm not doing that, then it's kind of just like, oh, like at the very least, let me like alternate, or like let me grab with, right trigger, left trigger, or something like that, and kind of alternate that way. Like that's maybe like my only complaint.
I mean, I'd say at worst it is par for course for AAA Western third-person adventure game, like as far as that stuff goes. So it doesn't do anything better or worse per se, as far as like climbing mechanics.
Gotcha. And did you have any other things platforming wise that you needed to get off your chest?
So yeah, it was mostly the glowy stuff, and it just, I don't know, it honestly didn't do too much for me. Like, I did like the mechanics, the actual engine behind the platforming felt good, but most of the stuff they had me doing wasn't, I guess, very captivating. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
I think that just kind of goes back to the thing of it seems like they wanted this game to be like super accessible, like even in terms of like combat, right? There's not like a lot of combos or anything like that. There's not a lot of mechanics as far as combat, so it's just kind of like, well, let's just make this as easy as possible so people can kind of get through it and see the story, I guess.
The crazy thing is,
this game feels really, really good. It feels really good when you jump from platform to platform. It feels really good when Monkey hits one of those metal things and it has that little ding, ding, ding. And when you do that finishing blow, everything feels good. I just wish they develop more around it.
It was more deep. There was more to it.
Pretty much. And they kind of get there with their next game, but that's different.
Huh. Okay. I'll keep that in mind. as far as combat, do you guys want to talk about combat as well? I know you said you had some things you want to say about combat too, Dante. And Greg actually already started alluding to it. So I think like this combat in this game is kind of like Batman Light, the Arkham series. It's not as the way. Okay, so there's like different types of enemies. So there's like you have to account for different types of enemies. So there's kind of like a puzzle aspect to how you take them down. The issue is, or one of the issue is that they're like kind of taking turns attacking you. They're not like you're getting attacked, from 2 or 3 different people. As Dante alluded to before, there's not really a parry. More so there's just a blocking. You just throw up your shield. And so there's like, it's less timing focused or timing based than other like Batman combats or anything like that. There's not a combo system. So you can just do like, just keep mashing X. You have X as your main attack. Y is your heavy attack. And then you can have, I think it's XA as your wide attack. And then once your staff is glowing, once you've landed X amount of hits, then you can do like a finisher move, which is it's B and Y. So there's a little bit of like Batman-y combat there. And then you also have like, the only gadget you have is if you hit left trigger, your staff can shoot you have 2 different types of ammo, a stun ammo and a plasma ammo. Stuns your opponent, and then the plasma one just shoots them and does damage to them. So there's a little bit in that. It's not as in depth as Batman, but I do like that. I do like the combat in this game, and it's fun. I like this is another opportunity to watch some of the animations that they have. They have like cool takedowns in this game, so those are really cool to watch. And I want to hear what other people have to say. So let me kick it to you, Trevor. How do you feel about the combat in the game?
Yeah, I just like the climbing and traversal. I really like the animation. They've really captured, I guess, the essence of like a monkey, the way a monkey would move fighting. And I never really paid attention to like the glowing staff, like while you're fighting, but it does. Like I unlocked the I forget what it's called, like a special focus attack that you can use.
That's what it's called, yeah, focus attack.
And usually it pops up like a little caption at the top of the screen. And so I've never even noticed like his staff glowing. But it's cool that they would add like contextual clues about, how to attack, because you can also unlock an ability that allows you to see when an enemy is vulnerable, when an enemy is about to attack, and when they're shielded. So it kind of clues you in on what to do, because a shielded enemy is blue. So with Xbox, I'm associating them with the button colors. X is blue. You use you can hold it down in order to break their shield. When they're vulnerable, they're yellow, which is Y. You can use your heavy attack. But yeah, I don't know, the contextual aspect of the combat I think is really good.
Okay. What about you, Greg?
I think for the most part I like the combat. I think I only really started having an issue towards the halfway point of this game, where they start kind of laying it on a little thick. It starts to become a little bit like monotonous and then kind of annoying, just because it's just like they just keep throwing enemies at you over and over. And again, it's kind of like the combat's a little mashy. So you just kind of,
so you body everybody. I know how you are about mashing.
Hey, yeah, I'm all about that. So yeah, I think that's the only time, like for the most part, up until about chapter 7 or so, like it was good. Like, I liked the gameplay flow. It was a little bit of, sneaking around, some combat here and there, platforming, You platform, get to the next area, then you might have to, try and either use stealth or a little bit combat. But then once you get to like chapter 7, they're just laying it on, like just straight up, just encounter after encounter after encounter. It's just kind of like, at that point, I wasn't really liking it. But outside of that, yeah, for the most part, I liked it.
Gotcha. What about you, Dante? How do you feel about it?
So, I have a lot of thoughts.
Good.
Overall, the combat is pretty enjoyable. I think it's more simplistic than it needs to be. I understand that they were going for a streamlined experience, but at a pretty early point, and this also partially ties into me having that like new game plus file or whatever that carries over a lot of stuff, but there are some fundamental flaws, I think, in this combat design. So one of the main things that I noticed was the block is this all-encompassing, like, pretty much I can be saved from anything. And granted, it's a skill that you upgrade, like, you eventually upgrade your block so you can literally take more blocks until you, like, can't block anymore. But it really doesn't matter where they're attacking you from unless it's, like, literally right behind you. You will block everything. So that kind of trivializes a lot of the, I guess, difficulty aspect of it and like your placement. Another big thing I had was the combat system was very simplistic in my eyes. Like, okay, answer me this. Is there any menu you can go to that shows you your combo list? Is there even more than one combo for real?
There's not a combo.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like you can kind of transition
like you can
from
do XX, Y, XXY, whatever. Like, you're going to do that XX whatever, and it's going to pop out the same animation while you finish it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, again, that goes back to the streamlining thing, so I understand why they did it. But for somebody like me, it was a little disappointing, especially with the platforming being kind of, very simplistic as well. And then my probably biggest gripe with the whole combat system is the enemy variety is practically non-existent, especially for like the first 5 or 6 chapters. You were literally fighting the same robot over and over and over again. And eventually there are turrets and stuff, but you're still mostly using those turrets just to take out the robots. So you never really have to change up your strategy up until you get to the bigger enemies in like chapter 7 and 8. And I think there's only like 1 or 2 more enemies. So you're never really forced to reassess what you're doing. So this kind of goes back to my thought of this being like a great podcast game, like something that doesn't necessarily need all of your attention to play it. And that also goes back to the streamlining of things. So I can definitely understand the appeal of that. I can understand why they did it. But personally, it wasn't for me.
I feel like I've been slapped in the face. So, like, normally when I hear people say podcast games, it's something that is like an MMO or like a Destiny style game, something that Borderlands, something that they're like mindlessly shooting or doing some type of activity in order to gain experience and rinse repeat, like they're knocking out quests. Just things that aren't as story heavy. Are you saying that? Is that a slick way of saying that the story in this game is kind of whatever to you too?
Yes, that's kind of, a different topic. But I also feel like most of the story is, hey, we need to get to this place, we need to get to this place, we need to get to this place. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing per se, but like the moment-to-moment story stuff isn't really there.
It's not necessarily the story beats, it's the way the story is presented. Because, I mean, these are these 2 characters, and when they go to cutscenes, it's not like, the one thing I will say, or I feel, is like the cutscenes don't...
If you really just, I hate boiling it down to this level, but if you take chapters 1, well, 1 has a lot of stuff in it, but I'd say chapters 2 through about 8. The actual plot of those is pretty straightforward. They're just trying to get somewhere. There's a lot of character development that happens between the beats, and I think that's the thing that this game does really well. But the actual plot is just a means to enhance the character development.
Almost like they're on a journey to the west.
Yes.
I mean,
I see you.
But I'm just saying, like, there are ways, like, there's plenty of stuff that happens in Dragon Ball as they make that journey, and they have both character development and a plot. I'm not saying that this game needs a plot per se. I think this is a narrative, like, choice that they did. But I'm just saying, personally, I did not find it captivating. There wasn't that much music going on throughout the entire thing. So I wouldn't have felt bad if I played the game with just subtitles and, like, listened to a podcast as I played.
but the facial animations,
I can still watch the game.
but you can't hear how it's being presented. You can't hear Andy Serkis in all his gravelly glory. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like, what you're saying is, like, the overarching, like, driving mission for them between, chapters 2 to 8 is, like, we just got to get to this place. So, chapter 2, we got to get to this place. Chapter 3, we got to get to this place, and it's the same place. But then, like, I feel like those chapters in particular, maybe not, it's the character development you're saying, but I think it's also kind of showcasing the world. And I feel like the set pieces that they have. So some of the things like the, and I guess we can get into that now, talking a little bit about the chapters themselves, but like just the environments, and like you can kind of, it expands on this future dystopia and like showcases like these environments in this world, and I think that is cool. I think a lot of the environments in this game are really cool, and like a lot of it is in this first half of this game. But like you said, maybe it isn't tied to the plot per se. It just happens to be the setting, Well, does anybody have anything that they need to say about combat or say something on what Dante was talking about? It's foolishness.
I was just gonna say, I don't know what it's called, but when you use your staff as a gun, or you can shoot the stun or plasma blast.
Yeah, plasma shots.
That is OP.
It is. It's so strong. Like,
Dude, you can practically one-shot the dog with that thing.
it's so good.
Yeah, I've upgraded it once, and I can one-shot pretty much everything, as long as it doesn't have a shield.
I wish, and this is me being such a fan of Batman combat. I wish there was like a quick, like if you just, because you have to hit left trigger to, or hold left trigger to use your staff as a weapon. I wish you could just like double tap left trigger to like do a quick shot on somebody. That would be really cool, but you're not fighting near the amount of enemies in this game as you do in a encounter in Batman. So, like, I understand why they did, but I thought that would be really cool. What's up, Trevor?
I don't know if this is necessarily combat. Well, you use it in combat, but whenever you use Trip's skills, I wish it either paused or slowed down time. Because I don't know if you ever tried to use it like while you're in combat, but it is not very intuitive.
No, I've never tried to use it in combat.
Easier.
Say what, Dante?
You want to make this game even easier.
I mean, it's a single player game, so why when I try to pull up the little wheel for her to move, like to give her a command?
It is a little sluggish, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, I feel you.
And have y'all used the vials like to heal yourself with Trip?
Nah, man, I regenerate my life, so I don't
Yeah,
really
for some
Nah,
reason
yeah,
it
I
doesn't
just-
even work for me. Like, do
I
you
think
have to be close to her or something?
I think you have to be close to her.
Okay. Yeah, she's always off hiding
What
somewhere.
are you doing
so-
getting hit? Just don't get hit.
Man, if I take a little bit of damage, I just want to use one of those vials.
Gotcha. Let's get into the story. So then, maybe there's some redeeming qualities we can pull out for Dante. Talk about this environment. I don't know. Maybe he'll like it by the time
Make
we're
me
done
into
with
the
this.
villain. That's great.
Okay.
Enslave my opinion. I see what you're doing.
Oh man. So the game starts off and Bunky he wakes up in a containment cell aboard a slave ship. He escapes and accidentally causes the vessel to crash. He reaches. Actually, let me take that back. I think actually Trip is also on the ship as well, and I believe she does something to override the ship, and that's actually what causes it to kind of start malfunctioning. And then Monkey manages to escape from his vessel, and at this point the ship is going down, and he's trying to get Trip's attention. She's just trying to escape the ship that's going down. And at this point, the game is presenting you with the tutorial. So, like, you're escaping this slaver ship, and it's presenting the tutorial. So, how to move, how to, like, do the platforming. It shows you combat, and it kind of puts some of this stuff together. So, you have to, like, traverse the outside of the ship while also fighting two mechs on the ship. Trevor, me and you love the tutorials. We love tutorials. How did you feel about how the game presented this stuff in the middle of like it kind of gave you real world examples as you were learning or playing?
I liked it, and it was mostly because you're doing it on this ship that's basically about to crash, and so it makes you aware that you're not going to be in this area for long. And I think
no sandbox this time.
Exactly, that kind of adds to like the urgency of it. Like, okay, I've got to pick up these skills pretty quickly so I can get through it. And
what about you?
It does a good job of introducing you to new stuff like Trip's skills. Like over the next couple of chapters, I think it paces that out really well.
Yes. Kind of going a little bit ahead. I do appreciate how the game introduces new things to you. It's like it doesn't just here's all the things you can do, and then you have to figure out when you could use it. Like every time they introduce it, it's like introduce something new to you. It's in a situation where you need to actually do the thing that they're showing you or telling you what to do. And then that's how you learn. That's how they teach you in this game. It's like, here's a real world example. Do this thing. Okay, cool. Like, here's some like filler text. Oh, you can use this ability to do this as well, and then you're good to go. You've learned it.
And then the next time it shows up, they tell you again, and then the time after that, and then the time after that.
What did they do that with?
Dude, like
I know you're gonna say everything.
Puzzle in this game. They freaking give you the solution. Trip's always like, maybe you should do this. Maybe you need to.
Did you say the P word?
I did.
Oh,
say the P word.
snaps! We're not playing brothers.
I will say these would be good. This is another thing about them streamlining stuff. They were almost there. They had puzzles in this game.
They have,
but then they take them away from you.
They have capital P puzzles.
They take them away from you because Trip's like, hey, Monkey, what if you did this to solve this?
It sounds
and it happens a lot. If you pay attention, it happens a ton. And it ticked me off. And they just constantly do tutorialization even after you've learned the initial skill.
I actually didn't notice there, but now thinking back on it, there's one puzzle that I do remember them doing it too, but I just kind of didn't think about it. So I don't know, like
they do the whole windmill thing.
Yep, that's the one I was thinking of. That's the one I was thinking of. No, wait, they do a good job? No, they don't.
I don't remember. Well, they tell you need to get to the top of the three things and pull them down, but they don't spell out like, hey, you need to go to this side, and
They
you
tell you,
can
they
only
give you the
access
button
this.
prompts though. Hit this button to do this.
I don't remember that
I'm
part.
pretty
But
sure
maybe it did do it.
I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm just thinking of the wheel, the sub wheel, when you're supposed to stop it versus start it or whatever.
Oh yeah, the actual like hold LB thing. They might telegraph that a little bit.
I don't
As
know.
far as like actually having to navigate the windmill, I thought they did a good job of not having Trip say like, "Hey, monkey, you need to get to the right side so you can get on this lever and ride it up to the top or whatever."
If you stay there long enough, they'll say it, because that happened to me.
So maybe that means that Dante was stuck because it was truly, and that's why he's using the word puzzle, because he had to stop and think about it.
That was one time I did have to stop and think about something in
Oh,
this game.
snaps. What about the scaffold, the one in the theater? Because I don't remember them giving you any type of prompt for that. That, you know what I'm saying? That one?
So that one would have been better if it wasn't just literally go to this switch.
Yeah. I'm not
and
saying
go
the
to the
puzzle
next
was
switch.
difficult, but I'm saying as far as them spelling out what you needed to do.
Yeah, I don't remember them specifically spelling out that one, to
Okay.
be honest. And I think that one was a little bit more straightforward. I wish they had a little bit more complex versions of that, and maybe we'll see that in the back half. I doubt it, but there's always that potential.
Actually, yeah, when I was playing this game, I started thinking about Brothers, and I'm ready to reclassify that game as a puzzle game as well. So I'm glad we're all on the same page. Huh?
You know my thoughts.
Okay. So yeah, like I think one of the most, like, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I really appreciated the tutorial sequence that they have in this opening chapter, and then I think this is like a prime example of them kind of whetting your appetite for like what's to come with the way they do the combat with the slow motion that shows up in here. Some of the camera perspective angles changing as the ship is blowing up. You're hopping over things, like even some of the ways that the you're just like, I'm trying to think of an example. I think there was an instance where you're pulling the door off of you're on the outside of the ship. You're pulling the door off of something, and it's this cutscene. You rip the door off, and then you just let go of it in this cutscene, and then the door hits the turbine of the plane you're on, and then it takes that turbine out. So then the plane just starts tilting, and now instead of you being on a horizontal surface, the game puts you, because you're out of the cutscene now, and the game puts you in a vertical sequence, and you have to climb up this wing of this plane as it's veering closer and closer to hitting the Statue of Liberty. So like some of these instances, like they're like super cinematic, and I really really appreciate and like that about this game, and I feel like this intro chapter does a good job of like whetting your appetite for here's what's to come, and I feel like this is a really good intro to this game, and it even like the environment, despite it being so colorful and like vibrant and lush, like on the slaver ship, you run into a guy and you're asking him for information, and you kind of threaten him, and he has this headband on his face, which and it eventually becomes the headband that you have on your character on Monkey. And he gives you the information, and this computer overhead just says like warning or violation, like the slave gave advice or gave help to escapee, and then you just see the headband light up and basically fry the dude inside it, and then it paints a super bleak world that, like, even though you're in this super lush and like vibrant environment, there is some crappy stuff happening. Like, you're on a slave ship, and like this dude just basically gets his brain seared because he helped you out. So I thought that was really interesting and really cool. Not to mention you're fighting like giant killer, mech robots, which is also cool. So did you guys, specifically you, Trevor, did you, like, I don't know what you expected with the game, but did that kind of just like, I'm ready for everything this game is going to throw at me?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember in our group chat where where I said, yeah, this is my type of game right here. But that was after the first sequence.
Yeah, man, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah, so that's chapter 1. I think chapter 2, you end up the end of chapter 1. I think the way it ends is Trip gets to the last escape pod as the building is about to crash, or the plane is about to crash into a building. You're banging on the outside of the escape pod to have her let you in. She hits eject, and then you're holding on to the front of it as it ejects, and then like the screen goes to black because you guys crash into some building or something like that. And chapter 2 starts off, and you wake up, you got a throbbing headache. You find out that Trip basically equipped you with that slave headband. So now you are forced to help her, and she tells you her mission is basically to travel from New York about 300 miles west to her village. And you basically are her bodyguard. And she kind of, at that point, you kind of learn some of the some of her abilities, like her hologram decoy ability, her ability to scout ahead, so be able to show on your HUD where mines are, what the enemies are doing, and some of the cool standout things. Like this is a pretty lengthy chapter, and I feel like this chapter also does a really good job of like showing you, like presenting the game to you. There are like mechs that are sleeping that you can kind of avoid interacting with if you move around them in a specific way. You get to kind of see some of Trip's and Monkey's interactions with like him picking her up and tossing her, or him lifting her, putting her on his back to traverse some things. I think this is the chapter you get the plasma shot. And then I think ultimately this culminates with a boss fight against, I'm using air quotes, a boss fight against a Demobot, which is this big, like, bulky mech that has, like, wrecking balls as arms. And you don't run into these enemies that often, but I'm interested to know, what was your take on the on this fight, Dante? Like,
it was a good change of pace, at least, like, I had an enemy that did a significant amount of damage, and I had to reassess what I was doing. They didn't exactly spell out how to take him down. It was fairly obvious, but there was still some thinking that needed to be done. So I think overall it was a good start to like introduce that enemy type.
What about you, Trevor and Greg? How'd you guys feel about the Demobot?
I think I died on him once, and that was mostly because I was trying to dodge and block, which that's probably the first enemy you encounter where I don't think you can block, and it's very difficult to dodge because the timing is weird. But yeah, after I died the first time, I kind of figured it out and basically just kind of played Ring Around the Rosie around that statue in the center.
What about you?
Yeah, just kind of like mirroring some of the other comments. Like, it was a nice change of pace. Like Trevor, I think I actually died there a couple times just because at first I was thinking that you could just, guard all his attacks, but that didn't work. So I'm just trying to get my timing down to dodge the attacks. But other than that, I mean, it was a okay boss fight.
I did appreciate that the boss fight lets you use your taunt ability in it to like draw his attention. That's not something that you get to use often, so I did appreciate that. And just to kind of go around table, like, how do you guys feel about Trip and like her as a partner? Like, do you feel like this is pretty early on, and like we can just talk about our experience through the first half of the game that we played, but do you feel like she pulls her weight, or does she feel like a burden at all? Or
I think for the most part she's fine. Sometimes it's a little annoying that you have to kind of, so there's a couple times throughout my playthrough where I'll forget that she can't get past something, so you just keep on running, and then next thing you know, you start getting that kind of whatever the
migraine.
Yeah, you get that, and then it's like, oh, so I got to go back and get her. Other than that, she's like early on in the game. I feel like she's pretty effective, like pretty useful, because you have the I guess the was it the EMP thing for distraction. So you end up using that a good bit in the first few chapters. Later on, she seems a little bit less useful, but if you're like kind of looking at the other kind of partner characters like from like Eco or something like, or Ashley from like Resident Evil 4, at least she's somewhat useful, you know what I mean? So I guess I'll take that over the alternative.
What about you, Trevor? How'd you feel about her?
I mean, as a character, I didn't really care for her initially, at least. And it's less about her abilities and more about just the idea of her. It's almost like white guilt, where she kind of feels guilty for enslaving you, so she feels compelled to help her. I don't know, and she was just kind of very matter-of-factly about it.
You're talking about how she's kind of a bad person.
Exactly.
And then Monkey still kind of falls for her for no reason whatsoever.
Like, you mean...
Gets a freaking death headband put on him, and he's just, I can get you home. It's cool. I understand. Like, it's a rough time.
Well, one thing about Monkey from other adaptations is he's a very silly character. Like, he loves playing around and taunting and everything, more so than Monkey from the game Enslaved. And so that's kind of where I got that attitude about it from. Whereas, like, he realizes he's a slave, but, he's just going to goof around.
I don't know, like, I get what you guys are saying, and I understand and I agree, but at the same time, too, like, if you think about it from, like, a lot of times it's the dude that has the agency and the girl is being brought along, and in this, it's the opposite. So she is the one, quote-unquote, in power, and she is making the guy follow her along. And so, like, she's spurring the action on. And I think that is interesting that it's a little bit different than your normal, like, typical story that you get.
I mean, if Monkey was the one enslaving her, it'd be like Black Snake Moan or something.
But I mean, like, not even talking about the enslaved part. I'm just saying, like, I mean, if we think about it, like, BioShock, Booker, he was, I just gotta save you, Elizabeth. I gotta do this thing. And, like, it's always the male characters, like, the one that's leading the narrative in this game. Where, for this story, it's like, hey, she recognizes that she needs your help, and you may not want to help her, but she needs to get here, so she's going to do whatever it takes to get there. And I feel like if we're going to say, like, as it's okay when it's a guy character doing it, then, like, it should be okay if it's a female character doing it as well, a woman character.
I think my main complaint is that he's just not antagonistic about this symbiotic relationship they got, where it's pretty one-sided for the most part. Like, I just don't think it's believable.
There's nothing that she necessarily brings to the table, especially in the very beginning, that convinces me that he shouldn't go way more ballistic than he does, especially in the beginning. But I feel like he has the most lackadaisical type of attitude, and he is, of all the characters in this game, and this is me getting a little ahead, I feel like he's the least fleshed out as far as backstory. He just is like, I was the loner type. I was raised by nature, by monkeys or whatever, and this is just how I am. So he doesn't necessarily have a sense of urgency in his character backgrounds. There's really not a rush for him to get anywhere. So, I mean, shit, might as well help her out, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of how, like, that's the kind of the vibe I get. Like, he probably wouldn't help her out with the headband. He'd probably be like, yo, I don't really mess with people. I'm just going to go do my thing. But, like, what else is he going to do? It's not like he's trying to get back to a family or something. He's just getting by, barely getting by on his own, so.
That's fair. I just wish they kind of built up that whole relationship between them a little bit more.
I agree. Like, I think I think initially it's very unbelievable, like how quickly he is to like, all right, I'll chill out, I'll help you, whatever, that's fine. But then like as the game goes on, like I mean, their plan is basically, Monkey has the idea. He's like, all right, since I'm going to help you get to this place, it's 300 miles away. It's going to take us the longest time to go by foot. If we go to this crash site, the crash site of the slaver ship, they had my motorcycle locked up there. And if we can get there, he says my ride. He never calls it a motorcycle, but he says my ride. And so if we get there, we can get on this motorcycle and we can make that trip a breeze. So like he at least has a solid plan in the sense that it's like, hey, well, if I got to do this thing for you, like let's at least like do my plan because we're gonna achieve this thing the quickest versus walking it by foot. And so that's the plan. I think that's what they set forth after the end of chapter 2. In chapter 1, it kind of is a little bit more just introductory stuff. This one is a lot more blown out. So there's a lot more traversal in this one. There's a lot more platforming, and you get this. You learn about the stun shot, get the stun shot ability, and then this one you also split up a little bit more. So you kind of like get to experience what it's like to be on your own, and you're both getting to the same spot, but you're going different routes, and this one also has another fight with the demo bot, and this one is a little bit, not a little bit. This one is a lot easier, where there's a whole bunch of stun ammo and plasma ammo laying around on the ground. So instead of like using the taunt ability and like racking up hits on them, taunting them, making them charge at you and everything, this one's a little bit more trivialized with the stun shot and the plasma shot. So it's a lot easier. But you do encounter your first mask. But, like, I just kind of, it's not that big of a deal. It's just really interesting, like, that they, in my game, even though I have all the collected masks, any cutscene that has them interact with the mask, he kind of still freaks out, and you get to see the animation and, like, the photos, and he still, like, freaks out, and she's still like, oh, you're getting a glitch again? And it's really interesting that I'm still getting that despite them not actually being there in my game anymore. The next chapter is probably actually maybe one of the first standout chapters in my opinion. This one, you have to end up climbing a crane to create a dropper bridge so you guys can cross, and that's when you first encounter the dog mech, which is this huge. It's probably the biggest mech that you face in this game, and it's just like this animal. It's on its high. It's on 4 legs. It's basically a dog, but it's a giant dog, and it basically attacks or chases you and Trip, and it initiates a chase sequence. And this is like one of the instances where there's a chase sequence, and so you and Trip are running at the camera. And you see the dog behind you, and you're just kind of like strafing left and right as you're like avoiding obstacles and everything. So it's a nice little change of pace from some of the action that you have been doing before then. Then you eventually get chased into a theater, and you're just trying to figure out a way you can get out the theater and continue on your mission. Eventually the dog does break into the theater, and you have to like, you distract them with this Shakespeare play set design on the stage, and there's hologram actors acting out Romeo and Juliet, and it's distracting the dog, and you end up having to do like, I guess the first puzzle, something me and Dante were talking about earlier with the scaffolding. You got to basically raise up the lighting for the play in order to get across, to jump on the scaffolding, to loosen it, to crush the dog. What did you guys think about this particular section of the game? Being in the crane, in the theater, the interaction with the dog, the chase sequence, anything that comes to mind, or like any of that stuff. How did you guys feel about this chapter? And I'll start with you, Dante. This is like the first chapter that you're in like a confined environment where everything else has been outside and like super just spread out. And this one you're in a building and like it stands out to me.
It is definitely different, and you do get a feel like you're in this building and things are kind of happening around you. I honestly don't remember as much as I probably should about it. I did think the whole like the scaffolding thing isn't difficult or anything, but it's a good aside from what you were doing up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely enjoyed that aspect of it.
What about you, Greg?
I thought that whole section was like really well done as far as like kind of like the camera work for when you come into that scene and trying to get up to the crane. The theater area was also like pretty well done as well. It wasn't anything super amazing about it, but I thought it was like really well done.
What about you, Trevor? How'd you feel about the dog, or did you like that little chase sequence?
Yeah, as far as the dog, I'm really glad that they didn't try to turn it into like a stealth mission. Because when I saw Trip sneaking around the dog, I thought they were just going to have to avoid the dog and it was going to turn into some kind of stealth sequence. But yeah, it was cool. The theater sequence, on the other hand, is some top-notch level design.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Top
Keep
notch.
going.
Like, this partly a puzzle. I'm gonna throw that in there. But
keep going. I'm here for it.
Like, I mean, they give you your objective, and you kind of have to figure it out. I was kind of bummed that there's no way to actually fall down, or there may be, but I tried to fall like intentionally, but couldn't do it. But so it made the stakes seem a lot lower. But overall, I like the way this map was laid out, and like having to make multiple passes in order to get all of the the light fixtures aligned, because you can't. It's not like an interactable where you just find the right terminal and you hit the switch and the lights go up and down. You have to actually get to each of them, and then you have to go back through in order to figure out, or once you get high enough.
You do?
What'd you say?
I don't think you do though. You hit the leftmost one, then there's the right.
Well,
one,
in order to get to
then there's the other one.
in order to get to the one that's furthest away from you, you have to either raise or lower the.
They have to be offset. I get what Trevor's saying.
And then you go back through and align them.
I'm just saying, like, it's not like you have to raise one and then unraise it at some point. You just have to hit them in the right order.
To a certain extent, but I mean, you still have to go back through because there's either one or two that are down after you make the first pass. So you have to go back through, because I actually messed up and lowered one and then went forward and ended up having to go back around again and to raise it back up again.
I appreciate. I like the level design too, because it's compared to everything we've played so far. Everything has been super vertical and just wide, like just vast and spread out. And in this one, you're just in a big theater house, and it's completely, like I said, enclosed, and you're just. It's such a nice change of pace, and even though you're in a building, so you don't get as much of the lush green environment, like all the plants and stuff overgrown into the theater, there are still like signs that this place is just as overrun and just not be abandoned as everything else, as the outside world. So I really did appreciate this part, and I actually like the cool touch too with the set, and then having the hologram actors. I thought that was pretty amusing because I mean, that makes sense. 150 years from now, like, people may not be actors. They may just have like holograms of people acting instead of having people play those roles, you know. So and using that as a way to distract the dog so you could solve the puzzle was pretty interesting too, and I really enjoyed it. It's stand out for me because like it's unlike any of the other chapters you play.
It's hard for me to look at this game and not instantly compare it to the Uncharted series, just because those games, like Naughty Dog is pretty much renowned for their whole making the puzzle part of the environment, and also making the environment for each area of the game incredibly unique, and tying those both into the climbing mechanics, how Drake so without breaking like too much into Uncharted, Drake is a treasure hunter, and a lot of these things he plans ahead of time. So he has like a notebook and notes that he literally took about this like ancient Egyptian ruin. You have to like cross-reference it as you're solving the puzzle. So when I think of that level of depth and that level of intricacy with like setting up this mechanic and tying it into the character's backstory, and then I compare it to something like this, it's very hard for me to really say that this is like top tier in that regard.
I respect that. I have the trilogy. When I got my PS4, I have not touched any of them, so I don't have that background that you have. But hearing you say that makes me like, okay, maybe. I mean, I eventually am going to check them out, but it's like maybe I should put that a little bit higher on my next to play list, because if I'm liking this, you know, I like this game as much as I like this game, and if Uncharted is anywhere near what this is, which it sounds like you said it is better than, then maybe I will.
I mean, they're different games, and this has the more like fantasy setting, and it does a lot of things really well. Like, I like the colors of this. I like the fluidity of the movement. I like the weightiness of the movement, like you said. And I like that Shakespeare thing was really, really good, and I wish they did more of it, and I wish it was a little bit more just developed in that regard. Like, this is a perfect example of a B game, and I think it's on the upper tier of B game, where you can tell, like, if they had a budget, this would have been so much more ambitious, and in the end, it probably would have ruined it in some regards. I think there's some charm to just having to deal with what you're given, and like, okay, we have budget X, and we have deadline of X. They're not going to let us develop this game they're not going to let us delay this game for like 2 years just to make it better.
Yeah.
So we just got to go for it, and I think they did a really good job.
Can I be
with all the circumstances?
Can I maybe throw out a comparison, and maybe you can tell me all you guys can tell me if I'm right or wrong. But this game feels like a better version or more realized version of like Beyond Good and Evil. Kind of.
I was keeping that one in the chamber for later.
Okay. Because I mean, like they touch on all these different genres. There's platforming. There's a little bit of stealth. There's the combat mechanic. There's some chase sequences. There's some vehicle stuff. So they kind of do all these little things, but they don't necessarily do. I'm not. This is not me saying this. This is not the thoughts of Marqus. This is just me saying how we kind of had been talking about it. But it doesn't feel like they necessarily excel at any of the gameplay stuff. Like, I think where this game shines is the animations, facial, and just like the way that the fluidity of the game. So it feels like a more modern version of Beyond Good and Evil, and it actually
it was hard not to draw that comparison when you get in that boat.
Right, yeah. And because I was thinking about it too, I was like, the character you meet is basically your partner, in Beyond Good and Evil. Because he's a mechanic.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, he's a mechanic. You fight with the staff. You collect orbs. In that game, you collect pearls too. And I was just like, man, like, you don't, like, there's the open world aspect of Beyond Good and Evil that is not in this game, but I was just like, man, there's a lot of similarities between the two, and it just seems like it was maybe last gen's version of Beyond Good and Evil, where it's like, hey, and like even the aspect of like, oh, if it would have made more money, then there, or like if it had a larger budget, it could have been even grander. But it had such a limited budget that it just had to come out. And then they also had plans for a sequel, but that ended up getting scrapped because the game didn't sell enough, you know? So basically what I'm saying is maybe we'll see an Enslaved sequel in about 8 more years. We're gonna see some.
It'll be an early access.
Some trailer. We'll see some.
We'll
see like some trailer, and it's just gonna be like the airboat.
It's kind of funny because I typed in Enslaved Beyond Good and Evil into Google, and yes, this is a very tired conversation that the internet has been having.
It's just something that I was thinking about when we were like, man, it does this thing, it is simplified, and I was just like, we weren't saying that about Beyond Good and Evil, we were just kind of saying like it was like a precursor, and it was early in, like it was reaching out to try to do all these things before anybody else was doing them, or like before it was like games were trying to do all those things, you know? And this game, it kind of seems like, okay, it came out at a time where a lot of people were doing all these things. And so, like, this is a more simplified version of, like, some of those other games. They're just putting in a lot more of everything in it instead of focusing on one or two things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like, Uncharted and also The Last of Us tie into that. I don't want to say they're the same thing as Beyond Good and Evil and Enslaved, but they've got a lot of the aspects, despite being slightly more grounded in reality in a lot of regards, and the whole, like, verdant, post-apocalyptic stuff. You see a ton of that in The Last of Us, and Naughty Dog also does a really, like, amazing job in Uncharted of using a really defined color palette, making everything very bright, very vivid. There's a lot of just fauna and, like, nature around you at all times. And they make their worlds feel super lived in. And that's what I'd like to see in, like, in a theoretical Enslaved 2.
Gotcha. Man, I'm just thinking about those two games now. Let's see. So we end up with the theater. So chapter 5 is this is when you guys are getting closer. You're still heading to the crash site. Very beginning of this chapter, Monkey gains access to his cloud, which is like a hoverboard, I guess you could say, that he can just surf around on. So you can surf on water or land. And that's a little cool sequence of you like kind of getting as much time as you want to like play around with it. And then as you get further along, you getting closer to the crash site. You traverse a collapsing tower to get to the bridge, and then once you're on the bridge, there's like it's super heavily guarded by a lot of turrets and turret mechs. So like there's this cool sequence where Trip starts up a vehicle. And then you're supposed to hop in it, but she doesn't know how to work it, and so it just juts forward and starts, going forward, and you end up having to use it as moving cover. And it's funny because she's going back and forth, like, left side, right side of the road, just swerving in and out of lanes, and you're trying to stay behind her in order to avoid the turret fire. And I thought it was like a cool way of them further developing these two characters' relationships, because like he's almost backseat driving her despite not being in the car, and just kind of like, hey, like, you're going too fast, wait up, hold up, like all that. And I thought that was like a cool interaction. And then once you get towards the end of the bridge, a dog hops on, and he basically chases you across the rest of the bridge, and then you get to the crash site, and of course the dog is there to meet you. So Trip kind of goes into hiding, and you get to fight this dog, and you get to use your cloud in order to race the dog. And I don't know, it's like another boss fight, I guess, air quotes boss fight, but it's another end of the chapter, like, big fight against a special type of enemy. So how'd you guys feel about this chapter? Like the cloud, that, like I said, that interaction with the vehicle, the moving cover, and even that last fight with the dog. And I'll start with you, Dante.
I thought the cloud was definitely like a really cool addition. Just it kind of comes out of nowhere, and then even for something that's not used very much, it has a very good feel to it. It's very floaty, I guess.
It's awesome.
I mean, it's literally a cloud, but it's fast. It's floaty. It feels fun to like jump between the different like freighters or whatever you're doing.
It feels just loose enough that it still feels good. Like it's not too tight. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
And it was kind of nice also just for the fact that I feel like as far as traversal, everything is like so rigid as far as you have these set areas you gotta, that you have to climb up, and there's only like, you have to stick to that. But like with the cloud, it allowed a little bit more freedom, I guess, right? You can kind of hop onto whatever, you can kind of go around, and it felt nice to have a little bit more freedom, I guess, as far as like moving around.
And hopping on and off the cloud feels really good too.
Even the animation is cool.
Yeah. Like especially when you're I guess if you're in an area where you can walk on foot, like and you can literally like hop off of that area once you hop onto the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what I mean.
And like, it's cool too because like.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Doesn't work a second time. It's kind of cool too because it's just like once you get the cloud, like you can use it throughout the levels, and like you can't use it everywhere, but it does help out in quickly getting you places. But I actually like how it's implemented in this fight with the dog, where the dog is on foot, like he outpaces you by a lot, but once you get on the cloud and then the boost and everything, then you can catch up to him. And I don't think the fight is too difficult, but I do like how they use the cloud to in that fight, and even with the way you take down and defeat the dog. I really like the takedown animations on the dogs. I don't know how you guys feel about them. I like that's something that we've kind of undersold. I'm not saying they're on par with any of the other games we've played, but I really do appreciate the takedown animations of this game. I think they're super, super brutal in a way that's cool because they're robots, and he's like literally ripping apart robots. So I think that's really cool.
Man, do I have the game for you?
Did we already play it?
We just had to go. We got time travel back like 6 months. Zandatsu, man. Tactical dismemberment.
I guess. Okay, well, I really like the takedown animations. I guess it's just me.
Nah, I like them too.
Oh, thanks, Trevor. High five.
All animations.
All animations matter. So chapter. Oh, and so at the end of the chapter, after you kill the dog, Monkey gets his ride. So then in between cutscenes is and it's kind of abrupt too. Is like so the cutscene is him and Trip kind of riding off on a motorcycle through like the deserts and everything, and the sunset, and it's a weird transition. There's a couple of weird transitions, but you end up kind of skipping, really going from New York 300 miles, and that next mission or chapter 6, you are outside of are approaching Trip's village. So there's a elaborate defense system in order to gain access to their village, and since she's a member of the tribe, the clan, or whatever you want to call it, it should be easy. But she does like the call signs and all that, and people aren't responding. So she's like, "What's up? I guess we're gonna have to have you. I'm gonna have to have you get us access on your own." So then you kind of have to climb around and get to the watchtowers. You get to a radio tower. She's radioing. Or excuse me, you get to a drawbridge or a tower. Lay down a bridge. There's a couple of bridge puzzles that I guess these are ones that Dante were alluding to that were pretty simple, or they gave you the solution.
Actually, I don't remember Trip saying too much during this section.
Oh,
Like, I do think they're pretty simplistic bridge puzzles, but at least they didn't like, hey, monkey, you need to hit the lever over there.
yeah. I don't remember her saying anything. I just thought maybe this was the main segment you were referring to. But uh, you go to the second watchtower and radio the town, and nobody's answering. So Trip starts to see the writing on the wall, and she basically abandons you by ziplining from the tower to the village. And Monkey kind of sees that, oh crap, there's a whole bunch of mechs in the village, and so he tries to catch up with Trip while also fighting a ton of mechs. And overall, this is a pretty short chapter. I think it's the shortest one in the game, and it leads into chapter 7, which is, I think it's Greg said it's his favorite chapter in this game.
Oh, definitely.
So why does it stand out to you, Greg?
You mean like chapter 7? Like what was my issue with it? I guess.
Oh, actually, let me talk about the chapter. Then I'll cut back to you why you liked it so much.
Yeah.
So chapter 7 is pretty much you looking for Trip. You guys are separated, and you are now in her village. And it's basically, this is a shooting gallery. There's so many opportunities. There's so much ammo around that you can just shoot all the mechs that you want. And like her village as a whole, the environment is pretty like favela-like. So there are like metal shanty houses. There's a lot of rust in bright colors, cloths laying around and the tin rooftops. There's the town square that you just know there's going to be a boss fight in the middle of the village that has a ton of cover and ammo. And here you fight a new enemy, a brawl bot who fights you hand-to-hand combat, I guess. He's like a more slimmed-down, sleek version of the demo bot. But it's pretty simple. And then you fight a couple of waves of mechs. And again, you can just shoot them just to kill them really quickly. And then you find Trip, who's pretty grief-stricken. And she's like thinking everybody's dead. And Monkey says, if there were survivors, where could they be? And she's like, I think the war room, which I guess is their version of a panic room. And then she kind of realizes that, we'll check on the war room. So let's see what's going on there. So now, Greg, why do you feel the way you feel so strongly about chapter 7?
I might just be like harping on it just too much, but it's just it's literally just too much combat. And I don't know if maybe it was a little bit. It wasn't necessarily difficult, I guess, for me, but it was slightly annoying. And I don't know, maybe that's different because a couple of you already finished the game and you're kind of going through it with like almost everything upgraded or everything upgraded, I'm assuming. But like, it was just kind of a nuisance. It was like you would kill some enemies and it's just like, oh, okay, well, here's 4 more. You're like, all right, well, I'll kill them. All right, well, here's another 3 or 4 more, and then there's some more tourists that you got to take care of. And it was just kind of, the thing of trying to take care of the mechs that are in front of you, but also trying to handle the turrets. Like, the game's just not built for, like, that type of combat. And it just made it just slog on, like, and I don't know. Again, I feel like I'm just making a bigger deal out of it than what it is, but it definitely was like souring my mood on the game at that point.
Have you upgraded your plasma shots or anything at all yet?
Not so. The only things I've been dumping money into is just the like health and what is it? It's health and then shield. Those are 2 things that I've been spending money on, but outside of that, that's it. I think I ended up buying the counterattack that you can get, that you can use out of the blocks, the block stance or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, that's really it. But so, like I said, it could just be a personal thing on my end. Maybe I just haven't dumped enough into it.
I don't want to say that's the reason. Because there is a lot of combat. And for me, it was like there was a lot of shooting for me, and I don't really prefer the shooting. So I actually would have maybe preferred the hand-to-hand combat, but I'd be probably sick of it just from the amount of enemies that throw at you if I was to play the way you played this chapter. Trevor, you upgraded your plasma shot. Did you play it more as hand to hand or more as shooting?
This particular level?
Yeah.
No, I sniped every last one of those robots or mechs.
Were you able to one shot them?
Yeah.
Okay. So
that's the thing. It takes 2 shots for me, so that also kind of complicates it a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, probably. Like, are you talking about besides taking down their shield first?
Yeah, so I have to do the initial shot to take down the shield, and then it's 2 shots to take him down.
Yeah, I can't imagine having to do that. And then did you upgrade the firing rate? Oh, so that would make it even slower too. Yeah, I can see why you had a bad time.
Okay.
Bad day.
And then, like, there were some mechs that had the little timer on them, where they would call reinforcements.
Yeah.
And if you didn't shoot them down fast enough, then you ended up having to do hand-to-hand combat.
I feel like they even just add that mechanic just to try and, like, to add a little bit of difficulty to it. Well, it's not even really difficulty, I guess, but it's like there's no challenge to the combat in general, so it's just kind of like, well, let's do something to make you feel like you need to hurry up and do this.
Give you a little bit of a threat.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I should have attended this.
It made me think of Transistor when I put the limiter on to make the cells respawn in half the time, and I was like, holy crap, I got to deal with this person. But just the amount of time that you have to deal with that is like 20 seconds, which is like trivial, especially that I'm fully upgraded. Like, I can be full screen and just like one shot them, which is kind of like doesn't make combat too engaging, but I like the fact that I can one shot them, so at least I don't have to fight more enemies. And I will say, for me too, just I prefer the hand-in-hand combat, so having a level that is just shooting for the most part was not that fun for me either. So this was like a standout. Like, it was a pretty lengthy chapter, and it kind of sucked that it was so combat focused. I don't think there was hardly any platforming at all in this chapter, so it was kind of a little disappointing. So chapter 8 kind of starts up with Trip basically saying, hey, we can go to the war room. It can only be locked from the inside, and so and it's still active, which means that somebody is on the other side. Must be my father. And then, tell me this is not the most video game plan, but like all the video game buzzwords is, the plan is to overclock the town windmill to create a power surge that will overload the war room doors, forcing their electronic locks to reboot, which Trip will override to gain access. Is that like the...
To find an audio log.
Is that like... Yeah, it's like the most video game plan I've ever heard in my life. And it's kind of played out kind of whatever. Like, you climb over to the windmill and you do this interesting puzzle where you have to climb up this windmill that's inactive. You start it up, and then you basically have to pull the blades. I don't know what you call them, the sails of the blades, I guess, in order to get them going. And it's kind of cool because there's 3 blades that you have to do this for, and as you progress further along, like as you pull more blades, the windmill goes faster, and you have to like get off the windmill and go back to the bottom. And the way to do it, you have to go through like these gears and mechs that are churning. And so as you're making this windmill go faster, that part of the puzzle gets harder to do, I guess you could say. I'm using air quotes when I say harder.
You can die on that part?
Not necessarily die, but you can get hit.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Wait, those things don't one-shot you if you like go into the windmill part of the windmill and you drop at the wrong moment?
I didn't get one shot, but I also am upgraded all the way too, so maybe that... Did you die?
No. I was hoping that it would kill you if you like...
I got hit once, but I think... it was probably the most red my screen had turned, but I think maybe it's because I was fully upgraded that maybe that's why it didn't kill me. I'm sorry to take away some of the illusion of that puzzle. My bad, guys. Didn't mean to ruin it for you. But then you get back to the town square and you face another dog, and this dog is super super easy. And then well, at least it was easy for me. And then you access the war room to find Tripp's dead father, and he has a voice message that's left for her, and Trip basically vows revenge on the slavers that wiped out her village, and she basically tells Monkey she lied, and she changes their initial agreement, which was the agreement was that Monkey was supposed to take her to her village, and then she would free him. But now she's basically forcing Monkey to take her further west in order to help her get revenge on these slavers that wiped her village. Which I feel a little bit weird about, because it's like, this is more of like the enslaved part where it's like, okay, now they're kind of friends and like he would probably do this for you anyways, but you're forcing him to, which is kind of wrong. But at the same time too, I'm like, this is kind of cool because you don't necessarily see a lot of revenge stories play out where it's a lady trying to get her revenge. And like the only movie or story I can think of is like the Kill Bill story. Not to say that she's as badass as Charlize Theron is, but just saying like it's kind of cool that
You need to check out Tale of Two Cities.
okay, sure, but I think it's just kind of cool that it's like she's the one continuing to spur on this adventure, which is interesting and not something you see too often. But how'd you guys feel about the windmill sequence?
Personally, I liked it a decent amount. It got me involved in a way I wasn't expecting to. I think it probably took me about 10 minutes or so to get through the entire thing overall.
So I said sequence. Should I call it a puzzle?
Yeah, I was about to say, we call it a puzzle?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a puzzle. It's
What? Okay.
and it's actually a fleshed out puzzle, unlike Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons.
Why are we bringing up
But
old
not
stuff?
Papa Yo, though. Not Papa Yo. It's like, it's on par with Papa Yo. Got it.
No, it's better than that.
How'd you guys feel? How'd you feel about Trevor?
I thought it was fun. I wish, well, I don't know. It wasn't as long as the theater sequence, but it was still a cool puzzle. Like, and that's one of the things that makes me gravitate towards this game is like the traversal puzzles, which is one reason why I like Assassin's Creed and like the Tomb Raider games, is because of that sort of thing. So this is right up my alley.
Gotcha. And how did you guys feel about Tripp's change of plans?
And it is
Trip.
what it is.
Really?
I am not a fan of Trip, to be honest.
Dang. Tough crowd.
I'm over Trip. Like it makes an interesting story, but that doesn't mean I have to like her.
Yeah, definitely.
I think having, what is his name, Andy Serkis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know anything about movies, so that was kind of new to me until I looked at his IMDb.
Have you watched Black
I
Panther?
think- Yes, I know he's what's his name, Claw?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does a good job. He does a very good job. And I think that's kind of partly why this game, it's hard to like say that she does a bad job, but she just doesn't, she's not at the level of Serkis, I don't think. So he's kind of the standout performance for me. So it's hard for me to get on board with Tripp as far as like her acting, her performance in comparison to this literally like dude who's doing Star Wars movies and Planet of the Apes and all of this jazz.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think part of it is just because you're the main, or he's the main character. Like, I feel like she does a good job of when she's, in any of the cutscenes. But I definitely felt that way. Like, especially, I think it was a little bit. It felt really corny when she was like grieving over the headset. Like you guys are split up, and she's like, "Oh my god," like all this stuff, and it just seemed like a little too much.
Her interjections are really weird and they don't fit.
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah, And then it was really weird too because you can kind of see the outline when like you get the video game features where it's like I don't see the character, but you can kind of see their outline because they're blocked by a lot of buildings, so you can kind of just see their outline. And like she's just standing straight up and she's grieving like, "Oh, my father," or so like I mean she's giving a lot more there's a lot more pain in her voice. But like her actual animation when she's saying that, she's just standing up, and it's just like, what's going on? Like this is really weird. But like I said, in the actual cutscenes, it comes through. But just in the actual game, it doesn't as well. At least in this particular point. Yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this up. This last chapter 9, the Wasteland. So this is you guys head a little further west by bike to meet up with Tripp's father's friend. He lives in a swamp, and as you find out that he has an infatuation with pigs, so he has a lot of pig signage. The swamp is pretty secure and has a very anti-mech defense setup. So there's a lot of mechs staked out outside of his land, but they can't get in. There's a cloud sequence where you have to do this puzzle, take out some robots and drop a robot arm, or take out some mechs to drop a robot arm bridge, which is pretty cool looking. Then there's an airboat turret sequence where it's a vehicle sequence where Trip is driving the boat, and you're on the back of a turret with a light, high beam, and you're going through this dark cave, and she's calling out, to the right, to the left, straight ahead, like she's calling out mechs that are coming out to try to attack you guys, and that was pretty interesting. And then there's another cloud sequence with more mines, and then you are getting closer and closer to the guy's land, and he's called it Pigsy Land, which is weird, and there's something blocking your way, so you hop off the airboat and to try to clear the way, and you find that there's a sleeping dog that is beside this path, and you accidentally awaken it by moving stuff, and basically Trip takes off on the airboat, and the dog immediately starts chasing the airboat, and you hop on your cloud and chase it, and it's a pretty simple, it's like a timed sequence or where you have to get to the dog in a certain amount of time in order to prevent the animation of it at killing Trip. So there's a lot of mines you gotta avoid and jumps, and there's boosters, and it's a cool little 30-45 second sequence where you get to take down the dog. So what do you guys think of this new setting? So instead of it being like a super vibrant, lush environment, it's the swamplands, but it's swamplands with a lot of machinery and mechs, and just there's a lot of there's a mechanical aspect to the environment. What do you think, Trevor? This is very different than the urban vibrant landscape.
This definitely reminded me of Beyond Good and Evil.
Which is a good thing, right?
I mean, it had a very similar level. But yeah, it is a good thing. I mean, this game is definitely up there on the list of games that we've played as far as Beyond Good and Evil. It's up there along with it. Like the level where you're chasing the dog, or the dog is chasing Trip and you're trying to catch up with it. I actually looked through the achievements list and saw that there was an achievement for taking down the dog in, I think, 25 or 26 seconds. And
I got it.
Man, that part was so frustrating.
I got it.
Because there are some mines that you could kind of get into their zone and it wouldn't explode. And then there are others where if you barely grazed the zone that they're in, it would explode and kill you.
Yep, that happens. There was 4 achievements or 5 achievements that I was missing that I still haven't gotten for this game, and so far I've gotten 2 of them, and one of them was this one, and all I did is I looked up the achievements that I didn't have, and I watched the video, and then I did it, and I got it on my first try. Like, I wasn't going for it. I was just following the path the guy took, but I didn't expect it to, like, I didn't feel like I did it optimally or anything like that. I was just like, well, let me see if I could even try to do this. And it was a little difficult because, like you said, you had to really hug the edges of some of the ranges of the mines, but it wasn't that difficult, and it was cool though. It was I like that. I like that time sequence aspect of it. What about the vehicle sequence with the airboat? How'd you feel about that?
It was really stiff.
Yeah.
I didn't care too much for it. And towards the end, is like when they start throwing a lot more mechs at you, I guess they try to make it seem like it's getting more difficult.
It's not.
Yeah,
It's not.
it's just really stiff to me.
How about you, Greg? How'd you feel about the swamplands, the dogfight, and the vehicle sequence?
I like the change of scenery, I guess. I didn't really have any like strong feelings on this chapter in general. I mean, like I said, it was kind of nice that you had a little bit of change of scenery, but outside of that, didn't really feel one way or another on it.
Dante?
Whoops, sorry, hit the wrong button. I definitely like the change of pace. I like the change of scenery, even though it's kind of like more common for the Unreal Engine at that point. Like, back in the 360 days, Unreal Engine 3 was commonly criticized for being like the brown engine and making everything look muddy. But since the game had done such a good job up to this point about not falling into that trope, it really like stands out in comparison when they pull it out now. So I think they did a really good job of setting that up. It was good to use the cloud again. I don't think it was like the most compelling thing, but it was a fun aside. The boat section, like everybody said, it was pretty stiff, but I didn't mind it too much. So overall, I liked it.
I like the swamplands, just like the environment, and I thought this chapter in particular, maybe not the most fun, but it was interesting because there was not too much platforming, a lot of vehicle like riding. Like there's 2 cloud sequences plus the fight on the cloud against the dog, or the chase sequence, plus the airboat or the vehicle sequence. So it was a lot of just being on a vehicle, which was kind of interesting. And I guess the payoff at this is you meet Pigsy. You meet Trip's dad's friend, which is the third and final character in this game. And he's a very interesting character. He is a human, but he's a short, stubby, chubby man that has some pig-like qualities. So he has like this monocle setup that like it has a nose and it's a pig snout, and he has that over the place of his nose. And then he also has like a pig ear, a metal pig ear attachment too. So he's an interesting character, and I'm interested to see Trevor and Greg's response to this character, because I think he's pretty interesting, and I'm looking forward to this back half of this game. Do you have any... I know you were kind of meh on playing this game, Dante, before. I'm just wondering if at the halfway point, do you still feel that way? I know, like, I think you were like on part or chapter 2 or 3, and you were just kind of like, I don't really want to play this. Do you still feel that way?
To be honest, yes.
Well,
I'm not, like, I don't want this to be misconstrued as me like saying the game is
yeah, I'm not
bad
taking
or
it that
anything.
way.
I like this game. I just, before I even went into it, I realized how little of it I remembered. And I was actually kind of surprised when I did notice a couple things. I'm like, oh, that's strange. Normally, like, I wouldn't expect to remember anything from a game like this. But I think there are some interesting things in the back half from what I vaguely remember of the story. So I'm a little bit more excited to play that half than I was the first half. And I don't remember a thing about Pigsy, to be honest. So I'm kind of anxiously excited about getting reintroduced to him as well. So I got a little bit of promise. Like, the last 3 or 4 chapters felt like I was mostly going through the motions. but I think there's going to be a pretty big pivot kind of soon.
I mean,
So I'm looking
there's
forward
got
to
to
that.
be, because I mean, we only have 5 chapters left. But I'm actually in the same boat as you, where I haven't played this game in about 5 or 6 years, and I do not remember too much about the back half of this game. I remember liking Pixie, and I remember a reason why I like Pixie, but most of my memories when I think of this game are the front half. Not to say the back half is not good, but I think some of the more standout parts were like some of the environmental stuff is some of the stuff that I remember in the first half. So I have a feeling that the back half is going to be more muted colors, more brown and grays, and so I have a feeling that's why I remember more of the front half of the game. But I love this game, and I'm replaying this
Want to
game.
make it nice and tight.
So I'm looking forward to this back half. What about you? And also, yeah, we're going to be talking about the DLC, which is, I don't think any of us have played the DLC. So I'm also looking forward to finally cracking into that, because I think that came out, or I got it like way later than I should have. But what about you, Greg? How are you feeling about the game so far? And are you looking forward to the back half or nah?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see how the game ends. I was a little disappointed that the masks that you collect don't really pay off to anything, because I was hoping that was going to be kind of like a fourth wall thing, and it was going to be something that kind of adds to the story. But yeah, I mean, in general, I'm kind of excited to see where it goes and how it ends, and also to check out the DLC.
Yeah. What about you, Trevor?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do with Pixie.
I bet you had to look up his name, because I forgot his name.
I looked it up like right after I finished Mission 9. But, I mean, they gave the guy his own DLC, so something's got to be interesting about him.
Yep. Cool. So, I guess, anybody got anything else they need to say about this game? Nah? Alright, then, Greg, do we have any questions?
Sorry about that. I was eating. Nah, we don't have any emails or any questions, but as always, you guys can hit us up at misscheckpoints@gmail.com if you got any thoughts, concerns, or feedback for the show, or you guys are playing the same games we're playing and you want to kind of follow along. So yeah, hit us up there.
Even if you're not playing the same game that we're playing,
Yeah.
we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I co-sign that. 100%. Hey, well, also, where can people find you at, Greg?
I'm everywhere, You guys can find me on Twitter at BoomboxHero. Facebook, same as that. Facebook.com/BoomboxHero. And my almost forgotten Twitch page, which is twitch.tv/XDRDMagnegroX.
What about you, Dante? Where can people find you?
I keep saying I'm going to start streaming again, but I just haven't found the game I've really been into enough to stream, I guess, or that I feel like would be an actual, interesting thing to stream. So maybe I can find that in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be gone for the next week and a half, so it's not going to happen then. But maybe after that, they could find me at Twitch TV/AwakenCloud.
Whatever happened with Yakuza?
So I started that, and I tend to play that game really, really late at night. So it really a lot of sense to start streaming it.
Gotcha. Okay, and what about you, Trevor?
You can find me on Xbox Live and PlayStation Network at Lyric Unsung.
Okay. I don't know if you had anything else. You can find me journeying to the west. That's what I'm going to be. I'm journeying to the west.
Hey, I want to break from the show for just a second. What is everybody's one E3 wish/prediction, since we're coming up on that?
Man, just to tie it all together, just to tie it all together. I want to see some more Beyond Good and Evil 2. Like I'm like, as we were talking about this game and how close it, or like how we felt. Oh, it's like Beyond Good and Evil. I got more and more excited about Beyond Good and Evil 2 for no reason, and I'm looking forward to hearing some more about that, and maybe something more realistic. I'm interested to see. I don't even know what else is coming out right now. If they are they planning on showing anything Borderlands 3? I'd be down for that. Some Borderlands 3 content.
That was in the Walmart leak, but I think they said they're not going to show it, and I think that's kind of a spite move on their part.
So they probably were, but then now they're not.
I think that's the current thought around the internet.
Damn. Well, shoot, I don't want to take anybody else's answer, so I'll just say Beyond Good and Evil 2 then. Trevor?
Release dates. That's what I want to see.
Release dates?
What you looking for?
And
release
anything.
dates for?
That Pokemon game?
And games not being canceled.
Delayed?
And delayed, man.
Pushed back, yeah.
That's all I'm looking forward to.
I bet Trevor wants to say Kingdom Hearts 3. I bet he does.
I mean, as much content as we've gotten recently, like I'm satisfied for now. So even if they don't show anything at E3, if they do eventually just give us a release date, I'll be excited.
I was super excited for last year's E3, and now I'm just kind of meh this year. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Well, I know why, but
I usually get excited like that. Usually the Saturday before. I think what's the first press conference? I want to say it's like EA or somebody. Or is it Bethesda? I forget. Anyway, there's supposed to be a press conference Saturday. Usually like that day before, I get kind of excited to see what's going on. But outside of that, nah.
So if the Walmart leak completely goes through and everything, like at least it's listed as shown in some fashion, I'd be very excited to see something about the Final Fantasy VII
I was waiting
remake.
for it.
It's literally been 3 years. So a screenshot actually leaked recently, like a week ago. They did some type of like recruitment ad, and in like the back of one of the monitors, you can see an off-screen shot of the game, and people are like, man, this is what it's like to be a Square Enix fan, pretty much. Like, wait 3 years to get an off-screen screenshot and analyze every single corner of it. And I guess aside from that, Nintendo definitely want to see Smash, but that's obviously going to be there. Hoping we see a little bit more Metroid Prime 4. And
Rage 2?
Which one?
Rage 2?
Yeah, heck, after that trailer, I'm pretty down for that, man.
Okay.
I should see if Devil May Cry shows up.
It's looking more and more apparent people have been waiting on that game for like 3 years because of leaks. But this seems to be like, it's time. All the Devil May Cry voice actors are like on Twitter teasing it and stuff, so.
Hopefully it's another Ninja Theory joint.
Bro, you can mute yourself and never unmute yourself after that.
I just Googled E3 Walmart leak lists, and something I saw was, I don't know, it was a Overcooked 2 potentially being on Switch. Is that a thing?
Yep.
Okay, I don't even have a Switch, but yes, Overcooked. More Overcooked, please.
So that was a second leak that happened where they pretty much announced like Fortnite, Dragon Ball FighterZ, Overcooked, like one other really popular game. And then Fortnite has pretty much been all but confirmed.
Oh, the Assassin's
Everything
Creed?
on the list is looking pretty.
Assassin's Creed?
Yeah, it might have been.
Let's see, Forza Horizon 4, DBZ for DBFZ for Switch, Fortnite for Switch, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Rage 2, the Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, Killer Queen Black, Overcooked 2, the Star Fox Grand Prix, Gears 5, Just Cause 4, Splinter Cell, and DMC 5. So yeah, I'm Overcooked 2. Man, Overcooked is so good. Yes.
I just need a second to apologize for Greg. I don't know what came over me. Like, I like DMC Devil May Cry, but I let the rest of the internet's opinion on that game slightly taint my opinion for a second.
Why you don't like Dante? Have any of you guys played Overcooked?
I think I own it, but I have not played it yet.
Yeah, I've played it.
I played it
Yeah,
with you, I'm pretty
that
sure.
was when I played it too.
Okay, you guys are welcome.
Damn.
That game is so good. All right. Do you got any other things that you need to exclaim your excitement for?
No, man, I just wanted to, show a little bit of our personalities out there to our loving fans.
You ain't got no personalities. We're robots.
We also don't got no fans.
You never know. Somebody's out there.
There are dozens.
All right. Well, I guess, does anybody got anything else that we need to say? E3, Enslaved wise, or anything else?
Nah.
All right. Well, we are Missed Checkpoints, and we're out. Peace.